Andrew's filling in, so we're going to be moving right along here. He'll help me watch for hands if someone needs to jump in and say something from online. First thing I'd like to do is turn our attention to Senate Bill 19. We just heard this yesterday. I believe it's the highway naming bill. Adam, you want to give us a brief description?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 19 would designate a portion of United States Highway 77 from the western city limits of Blue Rapids to the west, then west to the eastern city limits of the city of Waterville. This would be in Marshall County as the Corporal Allen E. Oatney and SP4 Gene A. Myers Memorial Highway. Again, in order to name the section, the currently named highway, the Perry Parkway, would just be a name for that section. And also the signs would be installed once the Secretary receives the cost requirements currently in statute. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for Adam? See none. Senator Bowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we had a great hearing yesterday, and remember, this is one we heard last year, and we worked out all the details last year. What we didn't mention with KDOT, making sure we had the location right where KDOT wanted it in the area. We worked on the abbreviations. We have everything perfect, and then of course it passed off the consent calendar 38-0. So I would like to make a motion that we place Senate Bill 19 on the consent calendar.
It's been moved and seconded that we pass out Senate Bill 19, favorable for passage on the consent calendar. It was seconded by Senator Pyle. Sorry about that. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, it's on its way. Thank you, committee. I think we'll turn our attention now to Senate Bill 101. Adam, you want to give us a briefing on 101?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 101 would amend the definition of electric assisted bicycles and also provide for the regulation and approved use thereof. Be a new modified definition of what is electric assisted bicycle. Currently, the definition has a limit of not more than 1,000 watts, for the size of the motor. That would be changed to the limit of less than 750 watts. It meets one of three classes listed in the bill. The other substantive provisions would amend the current statute governing the use of electric assisted bicycles. Currently, electric assisted bicycles are not required to be registered, nor are operators required to possess driver's license. And the bill kind of continues the non-registration component. It does, however, state that the riders are not required to maintain vehicle liability insurance, possess a driver's license, obtain a certificate of title, or possess a license plate for the bicycle. Additional provisions in the bill would require manufacturers to fix a label stating the classification number, the top speed, the motor wattage. The bill prohibits tampering with the motor unless a new label is affixed to the vehicle. The bill requires that the electric assisted bicycle comply with manufacturing requirements adopted by the Consumer and Product Safety Commission. The bill requires that any electric assisted bicycle operate in a manner so that way the motor would disengage or cease to function when the rider stops pedaling or when the brakes are applied. The bill currently provides that electric assisted bicycles may be ridden where bicycles are allowed. Also, electric assisted bicycles may be prohibited by a local authority following a notice and public hearing for a Class 1 or Class 2 electric assisted bicycle. However, Class 3 electric assisted bicycles may be prohibited by the local authority. And finally, the bill prohibits riders under 16 years of age from operating a Class 3 electric assisted bicycle, and Class 3 bicycles are to be equipped with a speedometer. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Many questions for Adam. Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have an amendment on this bill whenever the time is appropriate.
Okay, well, it's Senator Pyle for his question for the reviser. And then
Adam, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, can these bicycles charge at a charging station, or do they have to be charged at home?
To be honest with you, I'm not certain. The bill doesn't speak to that. I'm not sure if their capabilities actually on their motor.
Does anybody know the answer to that question?
Senator Hawk.
Yes, I have an electric bike, and I've only fallen off of it once. And my wife insists I wear a helmet. You might assess some damage already. But I think these bikes, and Gary Robbins is here, but are all 110 charging, 15 volts. And so I don't, most charging stations are higher than that, usually up to 30 amps, I think is the smallest charging station I've seen for an electric car. So I seriously doubt that there would be charging stations for them, but you can just plug them in any typical household current. Has been my experience. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions for Adam? Senator Dietrich.
Mr. Chair, we have an amendment, and I think perhaps Florence is here to distribute it. We worked with the League of Municipalities and our lobbyists to try and make sure that we maintain some regulatory authority for our cities. That was one of the issues that we had. So Adam can explain it perhaps.
Adam, we're on the amendment for League of Municipalities for Senate Bill 101, labeled regulated use. It's being passed out. As soon as it's passed out, if you could give us an explanation, we'd appreciate it. Thank you for putting it online. I don't know if you heard Senator Dietrich. She asked if you could explain a little bit of the amendment.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. This amendment was brought forth by, I believe, the league and maybe the proponents. This was their language they came up with. Essentially, what the amendment does is it amends the current requirements of where these electric bicycles are allowed to be operated, specifically in statute, and the jurisdiction over who can control where they operate at kind of the local level. What the bill does is it states that it opens it up to allow the use of electric assisted bicycles on trails or networks, or trail networks, excuse me, if you're looking on page 9, second probably page of the amendment. So it allows for their operation on those. Then also strikes language under subsection G2 and G3 and provides that the city may operate or may control through ordinance their control on any of the streets, highways, roadways, sidewalks, or sidewalk areas under the city's jurisdiction. So essentially the city would have control over, passing ordinance, banning or regulating their use. And the second part of that new big box here would be that any municipality, county, or agency of the state having a jurisdiction over a bicycle or multi-use path, trail, or trail network would be able to restrict or prohibit the operation of the electric assisted bicycle on those bicycle or multi-use path, trail, or trail networks. So for those particular areas, anyone who has jurisdiction over those would be able to control their operation. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions on drafting of the amendment? Senator Dietrich, this amendment, I believe, takes care of the issue with the counties being able to regulate them out in the state parks on their walking trails and hiking trails.
Yes, exactly.
Is this the amendment that was worked on by the league and the proponents? Excellent. Committee, further questions on the amendment?
May I move my amendment?
You may move your amendment.
Move favorably on my amendment as presented.
It's been moved by Senator Dietrich, seconded by Senator Pittman to adopt the amendment. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Amendment is adopted. Thank you for your work on this and cleaning up this one. Committee, what's your pleasure on this bill? Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd move that we pass out Senate Bill 101 favorably as amended.
Senate Bill 101, motion's been made to pass it out favorably as amended. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Hawk. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Do you wish your no to be recorded? Thank you. Senator Dietrich, would you like to carry this bill on the floor?
Thank you very much. I would. I was being a little
I
sarcastic.
appreciate that. Thank you.
I will.
We'll now turn our attention to Senate Bill 127. Sorry about that. Took me a minute to get my folder out. Adam, could you give us an explanation on 127?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 127 was a division requested bill. It increases the eligible age for online license renewal. It approves electronic notices for expiring license and removes a disqualifier for obtaining restricted driving privileges. Stated earlier, this section 1 would increase the eligible age for electronic online renewal licenses from under 50 to under now 65 years of age, so increases it by 15-year extension for those who can be eligible for electronic renewal. Section 2 would allow for the division to send the required expiration notice, which is required 30 days prior to the expiration of a driver's license, by email if the person to receive the notice has authorized the electronic notice receipt. And then section 3 would remove a disqualifier from obtaining restricted driving privileges for those individuals who have previously received a state suspension as a result of a driving while suspended conviction. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for Adam? Seeing none, thank you. Senator Bowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have an amendment, if now is a good time.
Now's a good time.
All right. If you turn to your testimony in your file from the division from Kent Selk, they asked to add commercial driver license renewals also into this bill, and it would be treated the same as what the bill is attempting to do. But I do want to note it does not include the hazardous material drivers, or hazardous, it's hard to say, piece. So it's just adding commercial license renewals. And that is what the amendment does. So it would be just allow people to have a CDL to renew online, just like other driver's licenses.
Adam, did you have anything to add on the amendment? I think it was fairly well explained.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just make sure I'm not missing anything. Materials. The only thing that I would add is, in addition to not doing the hazardous materials, the person seeking to renew would also have to submit their valid medical examiner certificate and their completion of the Truckers Against Trafficking training prior to the division renewing their license. And that's about the only other thing I could add.
Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for Adam. Would this include school bus drivers, Adam, with the CDL? Thank you.
Senator, I honestly, that might be a better question for the division. I'm not, if they hold a CDL, they would qualify. It doesn't exclude them. I'd have to look into that further if, for you to get back on you on that question, though, if the division can't answer it.
someone from the division online that wants to take a stab at that?
Kent may be online.
I see Kent's online, but he's muted right now. Lacey Black's online.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The member committee, Senator Tyson, your question. Yes, school bus drivers would qualify for it. The only individual are the people who have a hazard endorsement.
We're
Yeah, hazardous
understanding you
material
said
endorsement.
that school bus drivers would qualify. The only people who would not are the ones that would need a hazardous endorsement.
Correct, sir.
Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make that clear to everyone that they were included. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any further questions on the amendment? Senator Bowers, would you like to move your amendment?
I'll move my amendment.
It's been moved. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Pittman. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment is adopted. Committee, I have an amendment on expiring driver's licenses. Was the division that requested? You can pass that out, Florence. Adam, it's the one that says expired licenses. You got it up. Excellent. You want to take a stab at explaining this, Adam? This is brought to me by the division.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. So essentially how I understand it currently worked, as this pandemic's gone along, there's been some orders for individuals whose license has been expired during this time. And what this will do is I'll put in statute is that these licenses, when they're expired after March 12th of 2020 and before March 31st of 2021, they shall have until June 30, 2021 to renew such driver's license. And also, it also would apply, or secondly, this bill would go into effect at Kansas Register rather than statute book, or this change, excuse me. And then it also adds the same kind of provision for ID cards that have since expired. So it would apply equally to both driver's license and ID cards. The ones that expired would have would essentially be valid until June 30 of 2021. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Many questions. Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this because of the pandemic? Was there a provision about not having to renew your driver's license?
This is what that was for.
This is covering that.
This was covering to get it extended out to the 31st to catch those next set of people.
Good idea. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll move the amendment. Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Hawk. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Amendment is adopted. We're back on the bill. Committee, what's your pleasure on the bill? Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move that we pass the bill out favorably as amended.
Motion moved to pass the bill out favorably as amended. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Pittman. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Senate 127 out. Recommended favorable for passage. We'd like to now turn our attention to Senate Bill 131. Adam, can you give us a description?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 131 would be the bill that provides the regulation of funeral processions. Again, I misstated a little bit yesterday. Section 1 would create the new definition for a funeral procession, a funeral lead vehicle, and a funeral escort. Section 2 would allow for the funeral processions to go through intersections when the funeral lead vehicle proceeds, regardless of the traffic signals or right-of-way provisions. Funeral processions must yield to an authorized vehicle with lights and sirens on, yield to when instructed by the police, and exercise due care to avoid collisions. And lastly, stay within 300 feet of the next car in the procession when proceeding through an intersection. Section 3 would require processions to follow closely to other vehicles as is practical and safe. And the state law requiring certain drivers to maintain a certain distance would not apply to such funeral processions. Section 3 would also require funeral procession vehicles to display lighted headlamps and tail lamps or flashing hazardous lights if so equipped. And then lastly, Section 4 states that cities and counties may require a funeral procession notification to law enforcement. However, cities and counties would be allowed to adopt any regulations that are not in conflict with these new statutory provisions. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for Adam? Committee, what's your pleasure on the bill? Senator Pittman.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move 131 out of this committee favorably for passage.
Motion's been made to move 131 out favorable for passage. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Kalous. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? It's on its way with a recommendation favorable for passage. We'll now turn our attention to Senate Bill 167. And Florence, I believe we had some additional information that was brought to us to pass out on this. Adam, and could you give us a briefing on the bill?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 167 would classify certain public utility motor vehicles as authorized emergency vehicles, which is currently a defined term in statute. Section 1, as I stated before, would include those vehicles operated by an authorized person of an electric or natural gas public utility. They would be now included under the definition of an authorized emergency vehicle. Then Section 2 would exempt such vehicles from the authority of the county commissioners be able to designate the as authorized emergency vehicles, since they'd already be designated essentially uniformly across the state. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Adam, we just passed out KSA 8-1530. Do you want to go over that just a little bit?
Sure.
It's the one where it talks about the stationary and has to be using the visual signals.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you're correct. Oh, sorry, just pulling it up on my computer, just so I had it in front of me also. After discussion yesterday, the hard part of the bill was that, when we change a definition, sometimes facts are not always apparently, and it takes a little bit of research when good questions arise to the downstream effects that aren't always clearly visible in the course of a bill. I mean, the bill was drafted correctly. It's just what happens then later in the statute. Really what happens in 8-1530, it creates the citation for an individual passing a authorized vehicle, and really who is stationary on the side of the road. And really that's starting on subsection B. Subsection A would not apply. It would really be starting with B, where this is in reference to someone driving, passing these vehicles. So the driver of a motor vehicle approaching a stationary authorized vehicle, which these vehicles would now be considered under, when the authorized emergency vehicle is making use of visual signals, which are flashing lights, shall do either of the following. And so essentially this is the move over component that is currently in statute that should meet the requirements, that would meet the requirements. So drivers would have to move over when approaching an authorized vehicle stationary on the side of the road with their lights flashing. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions on the 81530 that applies? Senator Pittman.
Thank you. So you're saying, Adam, that we don't need to clarify in the original bill that this thing is stationary, that you're saying that the way it's drafted strictly implies that this statute only, it refers to this part of the statutes in 81530? I don't know if I asked that right.
That is correct. It'd only be a citation if someone is passing a stationary authorized emergency vehicle. So for someone to get a ticket for a violation, one of the elements is that the authorized emergency vehicle be stationary.
So in the original bill, we had some concerns that it looked like it was qualifying it as an emergency vehicle with a broader sense, but you're confident that's not the case?
I mean, for this component, I believe you did raise maybe an issue about some operational aspects of these vehicles. This will only apply for for people driving by them. When individuals are out working in the field, if they're stationary on the side of the road, that's when a different driver could receive a ticket. I think you brought up how other authorized vehicles, and to be honest with you, I did look into that, and that's under 8-1506, and what the capabilities of an authorized vehicle can do. And unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for that one, because it does say when responding to an emergency call, for them to be able to, operate in certain fashion with either park or stand on the side of a road, proceed past a red signal or stop sign, exceed the maximum speed limits, or disregard regulations. As that statute is currently drafted, I can't state that, when responding to an emergency call wouldn't have any impact, because that one is a little more vague.
So what we're saying is that the vehicle would have to be stationary for someone to receive a ticket for passing it.
That is correct.
Also, Adam, from what we discussed yesterday on 8-1720 that's in there, they still have to apply that the lamps used, I believe 8-1720 said the lamps used to display such warning to the rear shall be mounted the same level and as widely spaced as laterally as practical, and show simultaneously flashing amber or red lights or any shade of color between amber and red. Such warning lights shall be visible from a distance not less than 500 feet in normal sunlight. So just for a little information, that's what the 8-1720 that's inside there is. Thank you for that explanation, Adam. Any further questions, committee? Seeing none, committee, what's your pleasure on the bill? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we pass Senate Bill 167 out favorably for passage.
Been moved to pass Senate Bill 1, seconded by Senator Pittman. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Amendments passed out favorable for passage. We'll get it right here in a minute. Now I'd like to turn our attention to Senate Bill 100. Adam, you want to give us a brief description of Senate Bill 100?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 100 would remove the additional 90-day period for those individuals who have been found guilty of driving a vehicle while the license is suspended for failure to comply with a traffic citation. Secondarily, Section 2 of the bill would remove the $25 non-refundable application fee for those individuals applying for restricted driving privileges. Section 2 would also further specify that an applicant will not qualify for restricted driving privileges unless there is no other basis for the license suspension or cancellation except for the failure to pay fines for traffic citations. The current disqualifier from restricted driving privileges is removed for those individuals who have previously received a state suspension as a result of a driving while suspended conviction. And then lastly, the section amends the $100 reinstatement fee from $100 per offense to a $100 flat reinstatement fee. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for Adam? Seeing none. Florence, you want to pass out the amendment on Senate Bill 100? Committee, this is an amendment that was brought to me by Appleseed, the one that Appleseed AFP and another group had worked on. It's similar to the one that was in your packet from Whitechapel. I do not know that it's exactly identical, but I do know this is the one that this group had worked on with the revisor. I believe this has the portions in it to where it clarified some of the language on the pleas before the court. It also had the large provision in there on that new section 3 where a person can work off their fine with community service or attending classes. Changed the piece on the 90 days. And it changed the information that the people would be giving on when they're contacted, that they needed to contact the court to enter a plea prior to the date, the phone number and email address of the court when they get their violations. With that, Adam, if you want to explain anything that I've missed on this, I don't know it has everything that the Whitechapel one did, but this is one that was worked on by at least 3 of the groups, and I know it had the major portion of what Whitechapel had proposed that was in the testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this was the language given to me, like the chairman stated, and what it does, it would change how kind of when fines have to be paid, starting on section 3. It would change the language on appearing in court or contacting in court. It wouldn't always make them appear for the court, and it could, especially in section 4, it allows for, on citations, the phone number to be printed on the citation. It allows for individuals, I believe, on traffic citations to call the court and enter a plea prior to the court date. And as the chairman stated, section 3 really contains the new component, a lot of the new components to deal with the payment of the fines or court costs, and setting up hardship plans or waiver of fees. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Adam? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify, we did add new section 3 into the original bill and this new section 4. Is that correct?
New section 3 is in the amendment. It's that large attachment.
Yeah. And there's certainly the new section 4 seems to have some other things in from that statute 82106. Is that correct? It would look as it does on the end of the amendment.
Adam, section 4 was just back 2 pages.
I may have missed a part of the question. I'll try and answer it just procedurally. New section 3 is all new language. That's why it all appears in black. And then I think I'm still sharing my screen. Section 4 is KSA 8-2106, so it's a currently existing Kansas statute. That's why the current language is in black, and then the changes to the existing statute are in red here on the side. I tried to make the differentiate between, Section 3, which is all new language. I can't really show it as new, it's all new, and then the changes are shown in red boxes here for the current existing statute.
Our amendment just has them in black, Adam. We don't have the color unless we're on the computer or on the screen.
Yeah, it probably got printed just in black and white, so apologize for that. But yes, essentially then it would just be the new language is the language on the right-hand side, and then showing the box of where the new language would be inserted. That's the new components of the existing statute that would be added.
Mr. Chairman, so what we see in the bill, Section 4 will stay the same, just about it taking force when publication in the statute book. And what we see on the amendment of Section 4 are just changes to the statute. Am I interpreting that?
Correct. Essentially what will happen is currently Section 3 and 4 will just be shoved down to now be 5 and 6. It'll be renumbered.
Okay, they'll be renumbered then. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, what's your pleasure on the amendment? Senator Pittman.
I think this is a good addition. I think the payment plan aspect of this is very clear. It gives a formula for the amount that the payment plan would be, which is good. It gives an alternative for community service. I think the additional information that's clarified in Section 4 with the municipal court and the contact information, I know that can be a problem for some of my constituents not to know where to go and how to take care of these things. So I think it's a good amendment, and I'm willing to make a motion to adopt it if you need one.
Motion's been made to adopt the amendment. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Dietrich. Further discussion? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I should have asked this when we were first talking. Do we know if the bringer of the bill was part of the discussions by Appleseed on this amendment? I'm just curious if there might be some the amendment looks good to me on the surface. I just wonder if there are some unintended consequences with some of this.
Senator Fausto had worked with Appleseed and some of the others. She said she was good with the bill with the amendment or without the amendment.
Good, thank you. I appreciate that information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Amendment is adopted. We're back on the bill. Committee, what's your pleasure? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we pass Senate Bill 100 as amended, favorable for passage.
Been moved. Do we have a second? Seconded by Senator Bowers. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Bill's on its way. Committee, I want to thank you for your work this year. We need to take our folders back with us. You may want to keep your Trucking 101 for later on in your file. We will not be meeting tomorrow. Hopefully we can get some of these read in and get things moving forward. Appreciate your hard work this year. I have requested that I believe the bill on the division of vehicles to move the driver interlocks to the highway patrol from revenue and the one on towing liens. I've requested that those be blessed. I haven't seen them be moved yet, but I have made that request. That was Senate Bill 146 and 158, so we may be hearing those fairly quickly if they do get blessed. With that, is there any further business to come before the committee? Seeing none, we are adjourned on time. Thank you.